Hi guys, and welcome back to another IBRACORP video. Thanks for coming back and checking out the channel today. The video is going to be an interesting one. It's been fun to try and set up on my own, and in fact in this one I'm going to hopefully show you how to get started with Pangolin. Pangolin is a reverse proxy as well as a tunneling system. This is going to allow you to use a self-hosted version of something like Cloudflare tunnels, but also be able to have a reverse proxy with automated certificates, and it'll apply authentication over the top as well. So we can designate, for example, who can access particular URLs via the proxying of Pangolin. We've also got some really exciting news coming in the next few weeks relating to Unraid and working with Space Invader 1. So I really hope I can share some more with you soon. But for the moment, the best thing you can do is subscribe to both of our channels, hit the notification bell, and just sit back and wait, and we'll be sure to let you know once that content is up and running. The other thing you can do is please join our Discord server. We have revamped the whole Discord server lately so that it's a little bit easier on the eyes and gets you the information you need when you need it most. And our team will do their best to be able to help you where they can. At the very least, our community will be able to jump in and help you as well with anywhere you might be stuck using our support threads. Otherwise, if you just want somewhere to chill and talk to some people that are like-minded, especially with myself and others in the team, just jump into the Discord. We'd love to have you there. So with all that said, why don't we just have a quick look at what Pangolin is, and then we'll jump into the intro and get started in actually getting it going on your Unraid server. Today, I'm only covering Unraid. I'm going to stick to Unraid for this video, but I want to revisit Pangolin on a wider scale later on. Next time, I think we'll be doing it on our Proxmox server and setting up a node on our cloud infrastructure. That way we can use it as essentially a VPS without paying for a VPS if you already have a server with somewhere, say like Hetzner, like we do, and it's going to help make your life a little easier. So why don't we just jump into a little bit on Pangolin now and see how we go. So how does Pangolin work? So Pangolin provides secure application-specific ingress to all of our apps through a network of nodes. Users connect to the closest node, which authenticates them and routes their requests through secure tunnels to our apps. You can see this handy little image here. So we've got user 1, 2, and 3. They connect through the web. They hit the Pangolin instance. Pangolin dictates where they've got access to, and will send them on into that private network for us. How it works, so you enter through the node, as we said here, and DNS automatically routes users to that regional node. A node is always available because the control plane fails over between nodes. The node verifies the identity, checks access permissions, and applies context-aware rules such as IP and path-based filters, geo-blocking, etc. It also gives us secure tunnel routing. So authenticated requests are routed and flow through encrypted WireGuard tunnels to our apps, with optional load balancing and failover for your backend service, which is pretty useful if you ask me, because we can then really tighten down what kind of access those people get via the tunnel to the application directly. The applications receive the requests and respond through the same secure path as well. And we do get various different options, okay? Pangolin offer a cloud version, so you can go through that managed kind of approach if you want. And I'm not here to tell you which way that you may want to go. It depends on your needs. I think overall it's an awesome project and an awesome platform. So if you find that the cloud instance or the managed node instance is more suitable for you, go down that path, go have a look. But I am happy to say that they also offer a managed self-hosted instance as well. So you can see that option right there. So we've got a managed self-hosted instance, and then we've got the community edition here too. This is fully self-hosted, self-contained. We run it, we manage it. Everything's our own. Now you might be coming over and thinking, well, what's the difference between Pangolin and a reverse proxy? Okay, just quickly, we'll retouch no public IPs or ports. So if we set up the tunneling aspect of Pangolin, which you don't need to do from my understanding, you can just run it as a standard reverse proxy. But if you wanted to use the tunneling feature, biggest benefit of using a tunnel, of course, is not having to open up ports. Really, really important for us and what we're doing. Got zero trust built in, and it's got high availability, as well as this ingress mesh that they're talking about. Users always connect to the available node, closest available node. Now, mind you, that depends on you actually spinning up your own nodes. And from my understanding, the way we're going to set up today, you only get one node, so it may not be really applicable to what we're doing. I'll let you tell us in the comments below, though. So what's the difference between Pangolin and a reverse proxy? So whereas a reverse proxy would typically be on one single sort of endpoint or server or whatever you want to call it, Pangolin adds distributed architecture tunneling and identity-aware access control. So while traditional reverse proxies are typically single server solutions, Pangolin operates a distributed network of nodes, all right? Similar to how Cloudflare probably works. However, it is a more highly available option. So if we lose a node, there's built-in failover to go through an alternative node for that user as well. So you start to build out a little bit of that redundancy into your remote access of systems as well. And as it says here, typically with the traditional reverse proxy, you've got a single point of failure, geographic limitations, network dependencies, and very basic authentication going on. So we have our ingress routing, authentication, tunnel selection, failover, and response delivery all kind of built into what Pangolin can offer us today. Now, it's got identity-aware proxy built in, so we've got things like multi-factor, single sign-on, granular permissions, and contextual rules. Now, today we're just going to set up as basic as possible to get you going, hopefully get it up and running so you can actually use it, and then we'll expand on it in future videos because it is a beast of a platform, so we can do various different things with it. So I don't think we can cover everything in one video today, but drop in the comments below what you might like to see in the future ones, and we'll make sure we hit those for you. And then finally, for those that are probably wondering, Pangolin versus a VPN, what does that mean? Pangolin and VPN serve different purposes. So Pangolin focuses on secure ingress and application routing, while VPNs provide remote access to internal networks. They offer different approaches to secure connectivity. Now, I may not necessarily agree with all these things that they're putting on here. In my personal opinion, and I will stress this in any video where I cover remote access to your internal networks, I personally believe still right now that using something like a VPN that has multi-factor authentication on it, whether it's Tailscale or WireGuard or whatever other alternative method you're using in terms of VPN to authenticate you into a local network, is safer than reverse proxying something out to the web. If you are going to reverse proxy something to the web, then you want to be using something like a tunnel, which is what Pangolin offers us here, as well as Cloudflare tunnels have done for us for years here at IBRACORP. So this is us finally getting to look at something that's self-hosted in that sphere and being able to understand what we can do with it without having to open up things like ports on our firewalls, which is huge, as you can imagine. So anyway, guys, I think, if I read this word for word, we'd be here all day. I think it makes sense what it is. We're talking about a reverse proxy. It's got tunneling functionality built in. It can be self-hosted, and it can run on all of our servers if we want. Today, we're going to be focusing on Unraid. So if you like what we're doing, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate your support. And without further ado, let's get stuck into it. Now, I don't believe in wasting a lot of time when it comes to going through documentation, right? Usually when I make videos for you guys, the idea for me is I will try and absorb as much of that information as I can, whether it's on my own or with our team in the Discord, and try and translate it in a way that makes sense for most people to just get going, which helps the developers themselves as well as you guys watching at home. So what I'm reading here is the official documentation that Pangolin has provided. And I do really like it when developers provide an Unraid, installation guide, because, the Unraid environment can be pretty specific in that sense. But if you're using anything else, if you want your Docker Compose, you've got that here, so we can go over to Docker Compose, and it's going to give us a whole bunch of information. Now, if you're using Docker Compose, guys, they've given you the whole Compose file here. It's ready to go. Copy that bad boy, and you can pretty much pick up where we're going, okay? For everyone else who's following with Unraid, we're going to walk you through that now. And I'll be honest, in this sense, Docker Compose would actually be a lot easier than what we're going to be doing. But in any case, if you got Unraid, let's go on. All right, so if you're going to follow along, if you're a person that prefers the written, documentation, I'll drop this link down in the description. Of course, you can follow along in the video with the written guide and see what kind of works for you halfway. Otherwise, I won't be showing the rest of the guide on screen, but I will be following it off screen. So let's go on to the next step. Now, before we actually get going with the application, we do need to start setting up a couple of things like our DNS addresses so that we're prepped. Everything is in the prep, guys. Once you do all the prep, then everything else should hopefully be easier. So the first thing we're going to do is set up our DNS addresses for everything to do with Pangolin and what we need to get going. In our case, we use Cloudflare for our DNS. If you're using a different DNS provider, follow the similar steps on whatever platform you're using for your DNS. So here we are on Cloudflare, and I've set up a bunch of DNS addresses, okay? Now, obviously, I'm not showing our root address on where this domain points to. I'm not going to show you that. You'll have your own entry, whether it's an A record or a C name or whatever you've got going. In most cases, the way we're going to set this up is using an A record that points to your public IP address. So in our case, Unraid.io points to our public IP address. All of these other DNS entries point to then that root one as a CNAME. With that done, we can now go back and start working on the server. Now you'll see the server that I'm using today is that new IBRACORP YouTube server. This is the one that we're using in our Zero to Hero Unraid series. And the reason why I'm picking this is specific because it's completely fresh. So we can kind of just start as if you have just set this up for the first time and you want to reverse proxy with tunneling, okay? Now before we start, we actually need to create some folder directories because Pangolin expects a couple of files in those directories. So what we're going to do is create them now, and that way we can actually kick off without any hitches. If you skip this step, you'll find that the container won't start until we do it. So let's go ahead and do it now. So I've popped open the terminal here. You can see in the top right, and we get this terminal. And I've also just zoomed in to make it easier for you guys to see. So hopefully that helps. Now, if you haven't created that share, let's just quickly go back, check our server. We have an app data share there. We can see application data, app data, and it lives on the cache. Okay. So first thing we'll do is change our directory into that location. And so to do that, we'll say cd mnt/user/app data. We'll hit tab to autocomplete. And here we are in the app data location. We can say ls, and we'll see that it's completely empty. There's nothing in there at the moment. So what we do is mkdir, and we'll call it Pangolin. All right, this will make that directory, Pangolin. ls again. There you go. We've got a Pangolin directory ready to go. Let's cd into Pangolin. If you don't know, you can just type P, hit tab. It'll auto-complete. And there we are in the Pangolin folder. Now, inside here, there are some folders that Pangolin expects us to have set up, which is listed in the documentation. So I'm not just making this up. This is how Pangolin expects us to have them set up. So let's go ahead and do that now. So what it expects is a folder called config. So go make directory or make dir config, list it again, and then there it is. Go to cd config. Let's go inside that folder, and then we'll create some files. So first thing we'll do is say nano config.yml, okay, Control X just to exit out of that for a second. Then we'll create another folder in here called Let's Encrypt, and we'll create another folder called Traefik. Note the spelling of Traefik, okay, Traefik. So you can see when I ls, I've created two folders, Let's Encrypt and Traefik, and I actually didn't end up creating that config file. I did that wrong, so we'll go touch config.yml. ls again, and now we can see those directories, right? So we've got a config file, a YAML file there. We also have our Let's Encrypt folder, and we have a Traefik folder. Cool. So we've created those. So what we'll do then is jump into that Traefik folder as well. So go cd Traefik, and in here we're going to create two files. So we'll go touch dynamic_config, and we'll also hit up on the arrows there just to bring down the previous command. And we'll change that from dynamic to Traefik_config.yml or ls, and we'll have a look, and we can see both those files exist. So we're looking pretty good. Now on the documentation, they've got these files written out for you. So again, I will just link that in the description. So as you'll follow along the video, you've got that config there for you to copy. Okay, so I'm basically just copying it from there. Then we're coming back into our terminal browser. So what we can do is say nano, because we want to use the nano tool. That's my preferred tool to edit the Traefik_config file. So if I just start doing that and hit tab, brings us into the file, and then I can right click and hit paste. Now let's scroll through this file here. Okay, and we'll make sure that everything looks correct. Because we're going to be using a custom Docker network shortly, we can stick with that DNS name of Pangolin and the port as the default. So we don't need to change anything there. Scroll down. This part we do need to update. Okay, so we can just say admin at IBRACORP.io for in our case. Use whatever email is yours. Scroll down. Everything else looks fine. We don't need to make any further changes there. Control O and then Control X. So Control O saves it. Control X exits. Then we'll edit the dynamic config. So nano dynamic underscore config.yml. We're going to copy that from the documentation and we'll paste that in as well. Let's start from the top. So here we are. We've got our host. So we're going to change that to the DNS entry that we obviously just set up earlier. In our case, it's pangolin.unraid.io. Now, guys, just as a general rule of thumb, you really don't want to be advertising things like what domains you're using, IP addresses, etc. In our case, this is a testing URL, and once this video gets published, all this stuff gets shut down. So I'm not too concerned about it personally, but in your case, try your best to obfuscate things like this. It really just don't share it out. Okay, so we've updated that again. Once again, just go through the file and start updating anywhere with example.com. That's obviously going to give us issues if we leave it like that. That can stay the same. That can stay the same. And that's pretty much everything in here complete. Control O again, enter, Control X, and we're back in here. So now we have our two Traefik files configured and ready to go. The only other one we haven't done yet is the config.yml. So we can say cd ... to take us up a directory back to that config file, ls, just to make sure we're in the right spot. And then we can see the config file there. So go ahead and go nano config.yml. And in here, we're going to paste in the absolute minimum config file. There is a whole section on the config. Again, I'll put that in the description because it's not necessarily in the Unraid section. It's got its own page just for this because there's a huge range of different configuration items you can put in here. But this is what Pangolin says is the minimum that you're going to need in order to get the application started. So we're going to use the minimum and we'll say pangolin.unraid.io in our case. And again, just go through the file, sanitize it, make sure it looks good and makes sense. Now you see here, it's asking for a secret. You are going to need to create the secret. So use any sort of generator that works for you. Okay. Being a secret, it means don't share it. So don't go and share it. But this is our secret for today. And now you've got a couple of flags here. Make sure you pay attention to these. So disable sign up without invite. When you first start this up, I recommend you obviously leave that as true. So we don't want people to be able to just sign up without being invited. We don't want users to create organizations. And do we require email verification? Now, if you haven't set up SMTP, which is in the section here of the Pangolin config docs, there's a section on email and setting up that in here. If you don't set that up, don't turn on email verification because you won't get those emails to verify. So let's just leave it as that for now. Control O and Control X. All right, so we have all of our documents and folder structure ready to go. Now we can actually look at installing Pangolin. But one thing I will do prior to that is set up the permissions correctly. Now what I'm going to do here is just change some of the permissions to make sure we don't have any issues. We've got chmod 666 and then the path to the config file. I'll go ahead and click enter. So you can see that on the screen yourself. Always be mindful of what permissions you're applying. If you're not sure exactly what I'm doing, please fact check it. I'm always happy to be fact checked. And then we'll also change the owners to nobody users to that same file as well. So now with our permissions set, our folder structures set up and our files have been created, we can now go and set up the Docker containers for Pangolin. We can close the terminal and then go ahead to the App Store. Now those carrying on into our Zero to Hero series, we haven't set up our Docker stuff yet. So we're just having a quick look in here. I'm going to switch this time to using a directory rather than an image. And we're going to leave it as the default. Storage driver can stay the same. And our custom Docker network type, we'll leave it as Mac VLAN. If you're not sure the difference, they're all there. Mac VLAN allows direct connection to the physical network. I want that in this case. You may not. Don't have to use it if you don't want to. We want to make sure preserve user-defined networks is set to yes, and go ahead and click apply. Okay, now Docker is up and running. We do need to create a custom Docker network. I did a short video on it, but I'm going to show you how to do it right now as well because we need it for this setup. What we do is open up the terminal again and type in Docker create network. We'll call it IBRANet. Okay, you can call it whatever you like. You don't have to call it that. You know, it helps when I actually type the correct command. It's Docker network create IBRANet. Okay, so we've created that custom Docker network. We can close the terminal and now we can go to the App Store. So in the App Store, let's look up Pangolin, which you can see right here. We'll go on to install and we get taken to the template. Now, according to the documentation, you don't want to be messing with the ports here. So being a brand new server, we don't really have that concern anyway, but just make sure that we've set this up correctly, right? Network type, we're going to set to our custom Docker network, which is IBRANet that we just created. For our config, that's going to be our Pangolin config folder. So right there. So we got Pangolin config matches to the config location in here. Admin email, make sure that matches what we set up earlier. And then you can set up a server admin password as well. Keep in mind, as it says here, it will override anything that we've hard set in the config file. We didn't hard set a admin password in there anyway. So in our case, we're not too worried. But if you did, just keep in mind that this would override it. We can leave the rest as default. And then we can start her up. Now it's the perfect time to grab a cup of coffee and come back when it's done. If you'd like to share more of your wisdom or learn from others, feel free to join our Discord server. You can find the link down in our description below, where nearly 9,000 members come and join our Discord to share their ideas and help drive the community message that we are here at IBRACORP. You can also visit our new shop, now live at shop.ibracorp.io. You can find all of our brand new merch and awesome gear here on IBRACORP's very own shop website. By purchasing IBRACORP merch, you can help support the channel, as well as pick up some pretty cool merch for you and your loved ones. We take ideas on all of our designs from our community, as well as our own, and we've tried very hard to make sure that the merch is of the highest quality possible. You can also support the channel by becoming a member of our channel here on YouTube. We really appreciate all the support we get from our community members. Thank you, and we appreciate supporting the channel. Okay, now once that Docker container is done, we need to go into the logs. So left click and go to logs, and you'll see the first startup, it gives us a token. So this is the token. Make sure you right click, copy that. And now it's telling us that it's starting to run up on the address that we've set up. So let's go to that URL and I'll show you what that looks like. So if we left click, go to web UI, it brings us to our first time setup. Now, as I said, it gave us that setup token in the logs. So make sure you grab that and paste it in here. Then fill out the rest of the details as you see fit. And then once you're happy with that, go ahead and click create admin account. Okay, so now we have Pangolin set up and running. We can now log in and start working with the application itself. So log into that and you'll be greeted with your first screen, which is to set up your organization. This is going to be our first local site. So I'm just going to go ahead and call it IBRACORP. It's going to give us an organization ID and a subnet, and click on create organization. And the site I'm just going to call Unraid.io, and it's only going to give us an option for local right now. So this is an important step. You still have to go through this. And then the next step is where we can set up the tunneling. So go ahead and click create site. Pangolin side of it is set up, but now we need to shut it down and work on Traefik. So let's go ahead and do that. So come back to your Unraid instance and we'll shut down the Pangolin container. Go ahead and click stop. And now go over to the App Store. In here, look for Traefik. You'll find the official container there. Go ahead and click on install. And you can see that IBRACORP provided this template. So feel free to tip us if you find it helpful. Now, while we're in here, go ahead and flick on advanced view in the top right corner and scroll down, and underneath post arguments, we're going to take this from the documentation here, and it's going to tell Traefik where to find its config files. These are the ones that we set up earlier, obviously. The network type should be the custom Docker network that we set up earlier, as well that Pangolin is running on. So set that to IBRANet in our case. And now with the config file, we want to change that. So go back, click on Pangolin, click on config, and then click on Traefik, just like that. Okay, so that's going to map it back to that Traefik location that we set up earlier. Now, if you want to use the Traefik dashboard, you don't need to. In fact, it's probably best you don't if you're just starting off. But if you wanted to, you can actually set that in here. And you'll notice, at the start of the video, we did have a DNS entry for it. So I'll go ahead and do that. Now, if you are using Cloudflare and you want Traefik to be able to tap into Cloudflare directly in order to create and establish a connection, create the certificates, you can put an API token in. This will mean it doesn't need to go through the internet in order to establish the certificates. If you don't want to use this step, remove the parameter. So from what I understand in the documentation for Pangolin, they still expect you to forward ports 443 from your router to the equivalent port here on Traefik, which is 44301, and 80 over to 8001 to our server here in order for Traefik to get that internet going as well. I'm going to go ahead and click apply now after putting in our API token and the rest of it. If you're not using Cloudflare, you don't want the API token in there, you can just remove that parameter. Now I'm using a UDM Pro for my router, so I've got the port set here to 80, forwarding from 80 to 8001, and we're going to type in the IP address of our server, our Unraid server in this case, is that, and then we can hit add. And we'll do the same for 443, but it'll be 443 going to 44301 in here. Okay, as you can see, there is our 443 port forward. We'll go ahead and click add, and then the port forwarding part of the steps are done. All right, guys, so we've got that set up. And just to reiterate, back in our DNS in Cloudflare, we've got pangolin.unraid.io, which is our domain we're using, pointing to our public IP address here, where this server is living. And then we've got our port forwarding now set up to send that information through to Traefik. So now Traefik should be up and running. Now, if I just left click and go to web UI, it'll take us to obviously the local web UI, and you can see Traefik's dashboard there. Okay, which looks good. So what we can do then is start up Pangolin, and then we'll try and hit the public address that we set up for Pangolin, which in this case is pangolin.unraid.io, and see if that works. Now, I do apologize. We missed one step in our Traefik container settings, which is we need to add a path to the actual certificates used by Let's Encrypt. Pretty important one, so apologies there. Shut down all your containers, go back to the Traefik Docker template, and add this in. Okay, so we've got Let's Encrypt. The container path is / Let's Encrypt. And then the host path is going to our Pangolin folder, config folder, and then the Let's Encrypt folder. So go ahead and click add, and then restart Traefik. All right, guys. So after a little bit of digging around as well, I've had a chat with Owen, one of the lead developers there for Pangolin. He's been very helpful in the Discord, so thank you for your time, Owen. I've got a bit of better understanding on how this all is supposed to work. Now, you can pretty much skip all the part relating to the Newt if we're running this on Unraid and we're only willing to access Unraid. Now, if you wanted the whole tunneling set up, the way it actually works is we install the Pangolin stack over onto a VPS, and we install the Newt onto the Unraid server. In our case, because we're just going to run this on Unraid, we want to act it as a reverse proxy, then we don't need to do the Newt part. Okay, so the part where we go back to sites here, and we've got that IBRACORP tunnel, we don't really need to worry about that. We've got our local site here. What I did then was go back to my DNS and change the primary DNS to just the root domain, being unraid.io, and pointing it to our server here. Then I came under domains and I added that domain here. Okay, so we've left the Pangolin one there as well, but we've just added the actual root domain. And I'll show you why now. So now let's say we want to access Jellyfin outside of home, and we want to access it as a reverse proxy, right? So what we do is go to resources, and we'll go ahead and add a resource. We'll name it Jellyfin. The subdomain is obviously Jellyfin. We've set that up in our DNS, and the base domain is unraid.io. The host name, we can either use the Docker container name or the IP address. Doesn't really matter, but I'm going to go ahead and put, let's actually put Jellyfin there because it's all on the same custom Docker network, so it should be fine. And then the Jellyfin port, which is 8096, and add that in there. Okay, so then that's enabled. Go ahead and click create resource. So now we've got the URL there, and we start getting all the other settings that Pangolin gives us that we don't normally get with some other reverse proxy tools. So we can really start dialing down a couple of these settings if we wish. So whether we want to enable SSL or any of the custom host headers, custom headers, we can apply them here. And then at the top, we've also got authentication. So if we've set up SSO, which we haven't set up yet, that's going to need a whole nother video on it. we can do that, or we can actually apply our own SSO here as well. So let's say add a password. So I've clicked on add a password. We'll enable password protection. So we've got a password set on that now. And we can also set up the one-time passwords if we had the SMTP set up like I showed you at the start of the video. We didn't set that up today, so I'm not too worried. We're going to go with member, and then we'll say admin. So this way, we can use the members or the users that are inside of Pangolin as authentication users through Pangolin to get to our resource. And then we can enable all sorts of other rules as well. We can set up geographic rules, IP rules, anything like that to try and restrict the access to that resource. We'll click on Save Settings, and now let's try and see if we can get to that domain. So I've typed in our domain, which is jellyfin.unraid.io, and immediately we get sent to the authentication screen for Pangolin. This is really cool. So that means it reduces one extra sort of app we might need to run for authentication over the top, and we can just have it built into the reverse proxy itself. So in this case, we either have the option for a password because we enable the password. So maybe perhaps you had somebody you wanted to access that resource, and you just wanted them to have a password and not have an actual account in Pangolin. This is where you would put that in. However, since we have a user account in Pangolin, we can actually just go ahead and sign in. So go ahead and click login. And sure enough, it hands us off to the app or the resource that we're trying to get access to. So that's really cool. I like that. That's one of my favorite little features of Pangolin, being able to apply that authentication directly to each resource. Very, very cool. So you can then go ahead and start applying, as many resources as you want, lock them down the way you want. Some users might get access to Jellyfin. Maybe you want some users to access, different resources. And then you come into clients, so we can set up our clients here if we had them, our domains obviously, and then access control, setting up our users and roles, right? So you can really start creating some groups. Maybe you've got media server groups, maybe you've got web developer groups, whatever the case is for you. Then you come down to invitations. We can also create them. Mind you, you'll probably need the SMTP stuff set up for that. And then we've got shareable links. So let's go ahead and click share a link, and we'll say we want it for Jellyfin. Give it a title, Jellyfin. You can say it expires in 30 days or never, or change that to whatever you like, and go ahead and click create link. So now it gives us this link and a QR code that we can use. If I copy that, and we'll open a private window, and we'll paste that in and hit enter, it's granted access directly to that resource for the person using the link. So it could be used as a one-time link or something like that if you like. In this case, it has an expiry. So once we're done with it, we can go ahead and delete it. That person can no longer use that link anymore. So let's test it again now, and it'll tell us it's invalid, and it'll send them back to the login screen. So guys, that's Pangolin. Thanks for hanging in there. I know it was a bit of a long one, and to be honest with you, I was kind of learning as we go. So I'm sure that I've got a couple of things wrong. If I did, hey, happy to be corrected. Drop it in the comments below. Let us know how you're using Pangolin so others can probably take advantage of it the most they can. I think even as a standalone proxy with authentication layer over the top, it's a really cool application. I love a good web UI as well, so that always helps. The initial setup can be a little bit overwhelming for a new user coming into it, but Owen and his team have done a great job building a really cool application here and maintaining it as well. They have a great community there in Discord if you're interested too. And, please support the project. We support all sorts of projects that help open source become a little bit more widely adopted. If you wanted the managed option, they do have that, like I said at the start of the video. As for us here, we're happy to use it as a reverse proxy. I think what we need to do next is probably set up our VPS and show you how the tunneling really works. I think that was kind of not able to be done in this video as we're running with Unraid as our primary server. Most people generally, when they're wanting to use the tunneling feature, have a VPS where Pangolin is installed. That's where the stack lives, and then you tunnel out to the other sites, nodes or whatever that want to reach back to there. So if we were hosting Jellyfin in the VPS where Pangolin was installed, that would make more sense if we want to use that method. Or using it as a reverse proxy, which we did today, we've applied authentication over the top of a resource, and we've been able to get SSL certificates working. That's what we've done. So I hope that was helpful. It's something the community has really asked us for a lot in the past few weeks. So I thought, you know what, I need to get something out there for you guys to have a play and give this awesome project a go. If you liked the video, please subscribe, guys. It really, really helps. Yeah, we always say it. I know you hear it a million times on YouTube. Every like and subscribe really helps the channel. And if you can share it, that helps even more. So thank you guys. If you have any future suggestions, whether it's on Pangolin or anything else, drop it in the comments below. I read every single comment and I'll note down any suggestions you make. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next IBRACORP video.